For many, many years in my life, I followed a path that was not my own. That is to say that because of the influence of people around me, I felt that my life was supposed to be moving in a certain direction. Because I wanted to please those people, I spent all my time pouring energy into those things, even though deep down in my heart, I felt deeply dissatisfied and there was an empty feeling. It was only when I was able to have the courage to step back and really assess what I needed to do in my life and to listen to my heart space that I was able to find a pathway forward that allowed me to let go of fear and insecurity and feel much more stable and much more peaceful. And this is the advice given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, where he tells us that in order to let go of fear and insecurity, we need to find our true calling in life. So let's take a look. My name's Darren. I'm a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist, and a yoga teacher trainer. And on this channel, we look at how yoga philosophy and the practice of yoga can help us in our day-to-day lives. Now, in today's video, we're going to continue to look at the Bhagavad Gita in terms of trying to unpack and understand how it can help us manage anxiety and how it can help us to manage stress in our lives. And in order to do that, as we've been doing in the past few weeks, we're going to take a specific shloka or verse and unpack it a little bit and see if it can help us to understand how we can bring it practically into our day-to-day lives. So the verse that we're going to look at today essentially says this: "It is better to strive in one's own Dharma than to succeed in the Dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost following one's own Dharma, but competition in another's Dharma breeds fear and insecurity." So essentially what that's saying, Dharma in this sense, is a word that is being used to describe our own path, our path in life. Dharma is a word and a concept that we can unpack in much greater detail. However, for the purposes of today's video, we're just going to conceive or think of Dharma as essentially the path that we are meant to walk in our lives, the thing that we are meant to be bringing to the universe or to the world, and that by doing such a thing, it aligns us with our true purpose. So it's essentially saying that when we try to follow someone else's Dharma, even if we apparently succeed in following that Dharma and become successful in that field or in that way of life, if it is not ours, essentially it will always bring some level of fear and insecurity, because by taking on someone else's Dharma, we are essentially in competition, or the ego perceives itself to be in competition with that other person's Dharma. Now, to put that into very, very simple and understandable terms, I'm going to use an analogy from my own life. And that analogy is this, which is that, as some of you know, for many, many years, I worked in the business world. And for many, many years, I felt that in order to make a success of myself, I needed to succeed in business. As a result of that, and you could say that that energy came about as a result of my upbringing, it came about as a result of the influences that were around me in the early and mid stages of my life. And as a result of all of those influences and all of the energy that I took on from other people around me, I was convinced in my mind, and actually I was convinced in my heart, that I was destined to be some kind of successful entrepreneur in whatever field it might be. As a result of that, I pursued corporate jobs and I pursued setting up my own businesses in order to try to, for what felt like success at the time, to make lots of money, which was really my driving goal for many, many years, even though in retrospect, when I look back, it was something that was deeply unsatisfying and something that wasn't really nourishing me at the deepest level. But what I can say about the energy that I felt at the time when I was working in business was that no matter how big the deal, the feeling or the buzz of the deal wore off. After a while, no matter how big the challenge that was overcome, there always felt like there was this sense of emptiness at the pit of my stomach, that no matter how much I threw myself into my work, no matter how successful I apparently became, I was unable to feel at peace. I was unable to feel calm and stable and have a mind that was filled with equanimity. And so what we can also say is that the energy at the time felt like, and I often describe it as a feeling of trying to push water uphill. What I'm saying by that is that essentially all of the effort that I made into, or that I put into my businesses, it just felt like an exhausting amount of energy. It felt massively fatiguing. The whole time I felt that I was running some kind of deficit. And to be quite frank, my health told the story. I had high blood pressure. I often suffered with stomach infections. I was fatigued and tired all of the time. I had huge bags under my eyes, etc., etc. So you could see physically that I was lacking luster and that I wasn't actually that well, and that this way of life was not really suiting me. And so if we compare that, or we look at the verse that we've just uncovered in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that when you are living someone else's Dharma, fear and insecurity arise. And that was the other quality, or the other qualities that were coming up, was that no matter how hard I tried, I was always looking at other business people, always comparing myself to them, always thinking that they were doing better, always negating the successes that I've had. And there was a very, very negative internal chatter in my mind the whole time. And that really, when I look back at it in retrospect, was because I was not actually pursuing my own Dharma. I wasn't actually pursuing my own path in life. And as a result of that, what happened was a lot of fear and insecurity crept into my life and into my mind, because at the absolute fundamental level, I did not feel stable and secure in what I was doing. It was only when I had somewhat of an awakening, you might say, or a realization that actually, hang on a minute, this thing that I've been doing, that I've been pushing uphill for so many years, is not actually satisfying me, is not actually bringing me peace, is not actually bringing me connection to other beings in the way that I would want to be connected. And that I changed my approach and I let go of that world, and I let go of my business, and I let go of pushing into the corporate sector. And I took time out, and slowly but surely I found my way to this path of teaching yoga, that I realized that I had been living someone else's Dharma for at least 20 or 30 years of my life. And I can say that confidently now, because although whatever we do in life, it will bring challenges, I just know that from within my heart, the energy and the vibration of the energy that I get from working now in the field that I work, teaching yoga, being a yoga therapist, training teachers, it feels deeply satisfying and nourishing at a heart level. And there is never any morning where I wake up and I think, oh, I don't want to do this today. There is never any morning that I wake up and feel like this is too much effort, or it's consuming me too much, or I'm fatigued. There is no class that I end, whether it be with an individual or with a group, or whether it be an online session, where I don't feel deeply satisfied by what I'm doing and deeply nourished. And although, of course, I'm open to more change in my life, and you never know where the sands of time and the flow of life is going to take us, I can say that in this moment of time, at least comparatively, I feel like I'm living more of a Dharma that is actually my own path, rather than trying to emulate the success of others in spaces where maybe I don't have as much competence, or where my heart isn't really connected to that. So I think this is a really, really important point that the Bhagavad Gita is making, particularly in today's world. We live in a world of influencers. And if you think about what that literally means, it means people who are trying to influence our mind to see and think in a certain way. And so we are subject to the influence of very, very strong views societally, culturally, on social media, economically, politically. And as a result of that, it's very easy for us to get swept up in those energies. And because of our attachment to the things around us, and because of our attachment to those ideas, it's very easy for us to think ourselves into doing things that are not actually our heart's calling. And as a result of that, as the Bhagavad Gita so wisely says, when we continue to compete with other people's Dharma, or we live according to a path that is not our own, it brings fear and insecurity, because we don't have a feeling deep in our heart space that what we are doing is exactly what we're meant to be doing at this point in time. And when we don't have that feeling of foundational grounding and security in our hearts, everything else starts to feel insecure and anxious. So one of the things that we are counseled to do is to turn inwards. This is the path of meditation, to look inwards, to understand how we feel, to listen to the calling of our hearts, to listen to the calling of consciousness within, rather than to pay attention to the mind, which is a conditioned structure which has come about of all of the inputs that it has received over many, many years, decades, and even lifetimes. When we start listening to our heart more and more deeply, and we become attuned to the language of our heart, we become attuned to hearing what it is asking us to do and where it is guiding us, then we can have the confidence to act according to that energy. And people often ask me, and they say, oh, it must have been such a big leap of faith, or you must have had to have so much courage in order to let go of that life, in order to embark on this new path and this new journey. And the reality that I expressed to them is that it really didn't feel like courage at the time, because for whatever reason, I felt so tuned in to the language of my heart, and I felt so tuned in to understanding what my Dharma was and what my Dharma is at this moment in my life, that it just simply didn't feel like there was any choice. There was no choice because I felt it and I acted according to it because I just knew in my heart there was no other way that I could go. So therefore it ceased to be a choice. It just was a flow of action in a certain direction, which was unaccompanied by fear and unaccompanied by anxiety. So again, when you compare that to the words of the Gita, which says, it is better to strive in one's own Dharma than to succeed in the Dharma of another. It goes on to say nothing is ever lost in following one's own Dharma, but competition in another's Dharma breeds fear and insecurity. So what we can garner from this to finalize is that we need to look inwards. We need to let go of attachment to thought so that we can understand our true calling and see if we can gravitate towards bringing that to fruition in our lives. When we do that, we feel a security in our heart space which radiates out into the world, which means that we no longer feel that fear and insecurity, and we don't need to worry about what anyone else is doing because we feel secure and grounded and stable in our own path. So this is the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, once again, coming from thousands of years ago, but deeply relevant and deeply practical in this day and age. As I always say to people I work with, have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita on your bedstand, on your bedside table. Flick through it from time to time. Contemplate one of the chapters, contemplate one of the verses. It's a true form of self-study when we engage with these texts because they reflect back to us exactly where we are in our lives. And when we hold ourselves to these higher wisdoms or these higher paths or these higher ideals, we start to see a reflection of ourselves in terms of where we are in the moment. And they can truly help to guide us on this path towards peace. So as always, I'm grateful for you being here. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you. Namaste.